that wake up and better try to define what it is and better live in an environment without messing it up and better dealing with each other. Otherwise, we will not be able to continue like that. Meaning that I really expect that countries like in China and the US and so on are going to realize that they cannot continue to live as adversaries. We are in the Middle East will same the same thing. India and Korea will not, and so on. We'll all see that it's better to get together as human beings. It's better to think about others as human beings, and therefore maybe this will lead us to a better time for all of humanity.
Yeah.
Even though it was difficult and miserable and tough to live with, but it might lead us to a better time at the end of it all. And when I say the end, I don't mean in 2020, no, and in 2021 and beyond.
2021 and beyond.
Yeah,
this is
because I really think we are going to be in this mess to the end of this year for certain, and if not more. So we're going to be in a mess at the end of through the winter of this year.
Yeah,
it's right. It's there is no way out in a few months. I don't see it.
Mm. Wow. So this is going to be, so the short term is miserable.
Yes.
And the medium term
is okay, swallowable maybe. People, all of the such and such, all of these messes everywhere, worldwide. There were all kinds of messes that nobody dealt well with this mess. Nobody behaved in the perfect way at all.
Yeah.
And therefore, we were going to have to sit down and think, as human beings, what is it that we did, and how do we get out of this thing in a much better way?
So this virus came out of the blue. I don't think anybody has expected it. And on a global level, I think we were not well prepared for it. We talk in business about crisis management and putting backup plans and digitization and so on. And this not only took us to a huge test and pushed our limits in terms of everything that we know, but we look at countries and we see each country's approach and leadership style of dealing with it is completely different. This virus has no color, no gender, no nationality. We cannot even see it, and it just put all of us in paralysis. So you're positive that this is going to be for our best interest in the long run, but how do we deal with the disaster that it's creating in our lives, in our livelihoods, physically, health-wise, and economically?
But we also cannot take this mess out of context, because things like that happened in human within the earth in the past. There was a ta'oon, there was this, there were all kinds of things that happened exactly like that, and thousands of people died on earth, and people had learned how to live with it, or how to accommodate the new life in that. Meaning it is not the first time in humanity, in the history. Not too long ago, we had AIDS, and it raised havoc everywhere in the world. And we learned how to deal with it, and science came in, and science matured, and science found ways of dealing with it. And therefore, meaning that there was a human response, including scientific research and medicine production, and it worked. Meaning that indeed, human beings will run into difficulty as they have done in the past, and indeed, level-headed people will prevail and will try to make everybody else learn from the historical event, which is what is a disaster, but this is it. And how do we deal with it, and how do we live with the results? I really think that because things like that happened in the past and science came in to erase the effects, we're going to do this again.
Yeah. Yeah. You think we're strong enough to actually overcome this? Do we have what it takes?
Not at all. But that's what I'm saying. We'll learn from it, meaning that we're still going through problems and we'll continue to go through difficulties. And that I am certain that it will continue to the end of this year, because people are going to try to live the way they wanted, and the difficulty is going to rise again, and more people will get the coronavirus and the COVID-19, meaning that those who do not believe, or those who believe in their strength, are going to suffer, and until we're able to collectively come out of it in a reasonable way.
Mm. So that's health-wise. Economy, what's your take on what's going to happen to? There's a lot of panic, Dr. Farouk, when people are, even when they're coping with this crisis and being locked down at home and so on. People are in real panic about what's going to happen next, what's going to happen to my job, what's going to happen to my livelihood. What is the shape of this new normal that everybody keeps talking about, and we don't know what it is. We all know that technology is going to play a big part in our lives, but are we going to become secluded? Are we going to go out and enjoy eating in restaurants again? Is our way of expressing love to each other? We were talking with Sheikh Alubna a bit before you signed in, and she was saying, out of love to my mother, I have to stay away. So our expression of even caring about people we love is by staying away rather by becoming closer. All of these things that are changing very fast with us, the way we think about life and the way we deal with it. What's your take about this new normal that everybody's talking about, and how can we cope with it? What can we expect, or how can we equip ourselves to deal with what's coming?
This is an excellent point, indeed, and that is as far as I'm concerned, that's the core issue right now. And the matter, in reality, the way we're approaching it is the way that we'll do. What you just said means that there will be enough people with the mind, with the intelligence, with the creativity to think of what to do now and how do we go about life in the future. It's exactly that calculation that will make us right. If Sheikh Alubna was thinking about how to talk to her mother and this and that, and it's changing, good, because the change is important and the change is required. And therefore, we'll do something different now, because we are going to come back to the way we were, and then appreciate the way we were a little more, because we didn't think of the way we were was good enough, or was good to think about. Now we'll think about the way we were and the good ways about humanity and the way we interact as human beings. What we used to say, oh, he just was here and they said hello and they left. Then we'll think about it a little more and say, my God, that was very important to see that person and smile or touch him or touch her or whatever. So these kinds of things are among the ones that will make us survive it and will make us develop the new ways of dealing with each other that will be better for us and better for our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely getting us to reflect this time when we're in lockdown. It's getting us to reflect on the tremendous blessings we had in our lives that we never paid attention to. The people,
indeed,
priorities, with driving so fast and running so fast in our lives, we neglected a lot of these.
Indeed, absolutely agree.
Well,
100%.
Salma and Dr. Yeah, Dr. Farouk, the problem, what I see from the daily routine working nowadays that people, they are not willing to interact in a proper way. How do I say that? That people, they are not willing to adapt the situation, that to accept that there is a disease and we have to live with it for a long period or long time. So they are waiting till the disease finished, then okay, we start work again from new. But there are, for example, if we go on daily work and do the normal exercise and routine, because you are dealing with third party as a retail department in banking sector or any other sectors, but they are not people. When you call the other side, they are telling you, okay, we are off and we are not working 100% or 90%, we're working 30%. Okay, well, we need to move, but they're not willing to move. So we need to educate people how to work from home or from office or from, but in this situation, the other side from the other side from the department or from the business side, they are not willing to interact nowadays. They are waiting to finish this situation. But as you said and mentioned, this situation is going to take for long. And people, they are not willing to take this step further. So what do you think about that? How we should educate people? How we should, we have to make spread on this uh, few knowledge. We have to teach them on these things, how to start do the work from home or from office at such situation.
It is exactly what you said is what required for leadership. Leadership is now required to step in, from the president down to the dean of a school, down to the professor, down to all layers of leadership should come in and talk to people and convince them nicely that this might, if we should behave such as we now would like to have this get over with tomorrow morning, and we pray that it will be next week will be fine through it. But we should be prepared for those. And how do we prepare? How do we deal with each other? How do we such and such? How do we conduct our business now? And how do we conduct our business tomorrow? And so that we can conduct our business the way we used to be. Because even the way we used to be might not be the way we used to be ever, but close to the way it was. Meaning that it really is up to the leadership everywhere, at the office and the home, at home, and in the mosque, in the church, wherever that may be. Leadership has to step in and kind of help the people of the world cope with it step by step and deal with it day by day, so that we can come out with the least amount of problems, with the least amount of losses.
Yeah. Dr. Farouk, in terms of dynamics, global dynamics, and you advise a lot of governments around the world, the macro view, how do you see that panning out? Do you see any changes there? Do you see that there's opportunity for more cooperation or more shared resources? I mean, all governments are putting a lot of resources into this to come out from it. What do you see? How do you see the dynamic changing?
I see enormous changes in global dynamics.
Yeah.
The position between the US and China and so on is a disaster. It's accusing each other and telling them that it came out of a Chinese report or an institute, and all of this nonsense has to stop. And it will. There is no question about the fact that the post-COVID-19 episode or time would require more international understanding and more international cooperation and more international science cooperation. So there is no question about it, and people will recognize that. Even if we have bullies in the US or in China or in Egypt or whatever it may be, these bullies will not prevail. The people will figure out that it's not really right to fight and such, and where would Italy get help? Where would France get help? We must all get together to make sure that people suffer the least, people, wherever they may be, because if they do not recover they might make us get under the weather. So if we help each other, we will come out of it. If we do not, it will not happen. So I really think people will recognize that from this day forward, we will need more cooperation between countries, more cooperation between groups, more cooperation between universities, more cooperation between individuals, more cooperation between all kinds of different people that used to be fighting or competing with each other in the past.
Mm. That's great. We're getting some comments and questions on the chat feed. So we have Rania who's saying the vaccine is important, but is it really the topmost critical factor to move the world forward?
Of course, because each disease it will either have a vaccine or will not. If it does not have a vaccine, it will kill maybe 2/3 of humanity. Mm. So we definitely need the vaccine, and it is the number one priority to have something like that, so that we can help people from now on not to get it, or people that get it to recover. So vaccines are essential to life on Earth, and therefore we should continue to support these people that are working on vaccine, and particularly in international cooperation between scientists that are working on the vaccines and things of that nature. So because we're not going to get out of under this without a vaccine, we need one.
Yeah. And Sayed Zubair was asking, do you think that access to the vaccine will be an issue? Will there be preferred access? Would that be conditional on investment? How do you think it's going to be, panning out? It's like, it's not going to be accessible to everybody.
I think the company that will finally make the right to the vaccine, yes, will make a lot of money, but it will make everything available to everybody, everywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. So if you cannot buy it, maybe the group around you will buy it, maybe the government will buy it for you, meaning that there will be other ways for people to get the vaccine right away. Yeah. I'm sure there will be numerous ways to get the vaccine, not the individuals themselves, but the groups or the countries or whatever else.
So Dr. Farouk, a lot of people were like, a lot of debates, and we're reading about this and just like finding out, some leaders and some governments feel that, lean into the herd immunity and saying, maybe this is the way forward rather than a vaccine, or to the path to vaccine. Herd immunity might be the way where we can get people to actually go back to normal life, and recuperate,
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, or is it, there's another camp that says, no, let's lock down, let's like do the social distancing, let's figure it out, let's flatten that curve before we actually start venturing out and doing it step by step to recover. Is there
you separate these two, the Trumpian view, where Trump says we need to make money and we need to get back to work, and the human view to say, well, money is not everything. If we die, then the party is irrelevant. Therefore, we should slow down to fix things first, and then we can make more money than we could have if we tried when we were sick.
Absolutely.
Selma?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think if anything was tested at this day and age, mostly we always measure countries by their economic or political might or their military might. But today, I think the countries that won are the ones who had the best health system. And while we're talking about vaccines, we're talking about structure of distancing or social distancing, or finding ways to cope with this. I think the countries who had the best health system are the countries who moved forward fast. Having said that, establishing in fast-paced field hospitals, creating camps everywhere, like you see here in the UAE, for testing. Countries who push testing up front. May have seen big numbers right at the beginning, but that's a way of accelerating finding out and trying to reduce the casualties of this. So I think we'll come out of this where we'll see a lot of countries revisiting their health system. Many countries sometimes they've sort of put the health system on the back burner and took other areas in the society as a priority. But if you don't have hospitals to deal with this, if you don't have hospitals separate from your normal hospital to deal with it, if you don't have the capacity of manpower when it comes to medical people, you will not survive. And I think this countries who move forward are the countries who've been able, because first they put big priority. The health system is very crucial, and we'll come out of this where countries will start putting budget again into their health system, which they didn't do before. Hospitals run out of ventilators, you don't have enough equipment, medical equipment, and you deal with a certain population, but you never, there are no countries who have actually dealt with pandemic. Most of the problems we had was Ebola and some other illnesses that came around, but it was in very isolated area in Africa. It was not all over the world. But now this is something that had spread worldwide. And this is one way. I know in the UAE, not only the health system that was tested, but the food security. When you're a country that has huge dependence on imports, now they're realizing, they've already had something in place, but now they realize that that was a good decision made 10 years ago, but now they really have to work hard on it and make sure that food security is a critical path. So yes, Salma, I agree that most of us are in panic because we think of the economic factor on this, whether it's from the big companies or from the companies like the SMEs and the others, companies that are dependent on the big companies. These are the ones that are just going to dissolve. It's just going to dissolve just like that. And we build our thinking of the future based on a lot of creation of service-oriented small companies that actually help. So a lot of the SMEs, a lot of the smart kids with the stuff that they do. But what we see now is even that has been tested. So the way we think forward is we really have to think how we can move forward differently than we had before.
Mm-hmm.
How would Tujari.com work out in this?
Well, I'll tell you what, from my butcher to my supermarket to my clothes, everything now is online. I do it at home from my phone. I love my phone. So, and you know, for someone who's 62, this is great because this is up the alley of a lot of young people. They're the most adaptive, but I think some of us have managed to survive.
Indeed.
But yes, at that time, yes, it was ahead of its time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So some people are trying to join, and I'm just not gonna allow it because it might be the hackers again. So I'm. So Sheikh Lubna, you were mentioning that in all probability SMEs are gonna be dissolving. You see them disappear in our economies?
Not really. What I meant was some of the existing ones, some of them will dissolve. I think some of them will go because they depend on big companies. So if the big companies are releasing their people, they will automatically cut down on the number of companies that serve them. However, companies that are internet-based and they're based on technology, artificial intelligence, are the ones who are actually going to grow big. We have seen in this whole thing, Bezos made the biggest money than anyone else because it's all on the internet. Yeah. So what it is technology is what's going to be all about. How we transform our life or lifestyle into technology by honing in technology, utilizing it, using all the tools in our life, where it becomes a way of life. It will be our lifestyle going forward. And as I heard earlier, It is tough to adjust. It is tough to adapt and adopt. But I'm a strong believer, and I'm an optimist, that there's so much on the internet now, exactly like what you're doing, Selma, where there are people being coached. There are people who have been talked to on the internet. If people just go and search, they will find loads of stuff on the internet to help them out, and things they can do and things that could help and assist in their life. So things will change. If you have a maid that comes 2 or 3 times a week to clean your apartment, I think the robot cleaner might be the best way to go forwards, because it's cheaper, it's more efficient, it can sit behind you and move on its own, and it doesn't give you a headache. So technology is the way to go.
But I guess the question that I would ask then is, what happens to the maid that has been replaced by the bot, or the many others, the day laborers in many different countries? And we've got billions of them, right? It's a large part of the population, not where we're sitting, but of the world. So as those that are able to replace, adapt, and move into this new world, do so, what happens to the ones who can't, right? And what do we need to be thinking about there?
Yeah, sure.
That's a great question. That's a good point. Yeah.
But remember, Rania, we talked about this for in 2019 toward 2020 and beyond, when we said robots and artificial intelligence is going to actually replace a lot of people. What we didn't think about, that this was accelerated so fast and it hit in our face. And this is what happened now. You see hundreds and thousands of people were repatriated here in the UAE going back home, because either they've been laid off or they don't think they have a future, and it's tough. It really is tough. It's disheartening. But again, we have to think differently.
And one of the things that we should think about is also retraining these people for other jobs, or re-educating them for free to do something different. So we need to rethink our relationship in society, and what are we supposed to do for the people that have nots.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, a lot of businesses and everybody's thinking about retooling, rethinking, reskilling people, but, you know, in which direction? Everybody, you know, we all have an idea that it needs to be technology oriented, focused, and so on. But while we're thinking about that, most of the actions that are being taken right now are to shrinking our costs, shrinking our expenses, and so on. You know, let's just do that, and then we'll think about growth later. And I think, you know, the winners might be the ones who hop on the bandwagon of being able to get into the growth mentality much quicker than anybody else. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, just from the discussion that we just had, one of the things that I think that would be a very quick growth is growth in the technological things that help people in small ways, whatever it might be. I have no idea what is that going to be, and what is the new phone going to be able to do, and things like this. But it will. I really think that what Sheikh Lubna said is true. It's now that the technology is going to be more important and more viable as a way to expand, then we will need to expand our knowledge of the technology and our ways of utilizing the technology and our means of training more people into using it, or in producing it, and manufacturing it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Dealing with it. Yeah,
absolutely. It's really interesting how in our you know, seemingly isolation and being locked down in our own homes or places and so on, I feel that we're reaching out to each other even more than before. You know, we're on Zoom, we're trying to connect with each other more. So this we call it isolation, but I really feel that it's not really isolation, because we're really connected more than before. You know, I'm getting the chance to see you and talk to you, you know, even more than when you know, it used to be years before we pin down a date and a time that we meet and see each other. And I think that's really, really helpful in taking things forward, because I don't know if we have to call it isolation or social distancing. We have to come up with a new definition for it that actually has a different connotation, because really it has a positive connotation to it as well.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think the social interaction will increase, not just between people from the same country, but from countries with each other, because that is what I meant by people are going to be a little more humble, countries are going to be a little more human, and people are going to be a little more connected and listening to the others and listening to their ideas and hoping that they will be just as good as they are, rather than competing with them financially and emotionally in every other way. So I really think that that's a good point that will show that we will have more connection with each other. We will learn from each other, and we will need each other.
Yeah.
May I add something, Salma? I'm sorry that I joined a bit late.
How are you?
I'm honored to be accepted into your Zoom before the hacker started to attack the group. I just would like to mention that we are social beings, and this word that you're using as isolation, or replacing human being by robots and being, you know, more connected through the internet, and that's never gonna replace or make people healthy and well. We know that from now over 6 to 8 weeks of quarantine, we're seeing more and more people with mental health issues. The number of panic attacks, anxiety, depression is just going more. There's more domestic violence. This is affecting people so much on the mental level, and we have to find out ways to decrease this. And I don't think the way to go is more social distancing and more dependence on internet. If we look at studies that has been done by Harvard for 70 years, they tracked people, and they saw that the strongest link to well-being of a human being was the relationships with other humans, whether it's friendship or it's a relationship with the family or someone who has the kids. The social factor is the most important thing to the quality of a human being. So I'm not with the expansion. We cannot resist it. It's coming. We are even seeing patients through, you know, online consultation. It's not the same. So many cases, when they give you the symptoms, it's something, and then when you examine them, you find it's totally different. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And even today, I was looking at one news clip from Arabiya, our infectious disease consultant, who's prominent figures in Saudi Arabia, Dr. Al-Hagil. He's saying, in spite of the coronavirus having massive effect on the health of the people, now that we know what we're dealing with, and we know the way the virus is contagious, we can now deal with it. The impact of the mental health issue on the human beings is now becoming much more than the effect of the virus. Some papers have already published from, you know, very reputable institutes that they think by now almost 90% of the people have already gotten the virus. They could have been asymptomatic. They could have gotten it. If you test everyone with antibodies, you will know that they've had it. So the best thing is to be cautious, do, you know, the usual measures, not to be obsessive, but go back to your life, because it's not only through internet. If I see you, Salma, it's not the same as I touch you, I hug you, I speak to you. We need that. We are social beings, and since infectious disease specialists are saying go back to normal life, I think I would rather hear that than more isolation and more robots replacing people. That's my point, and I wanted just to share it with you.
Thank you.
That will come in later. I don't think that this can be done now. You cannot say that I want people to hug today. Because
Not,
if you...
not hug. No,
yes.
not today. Not today.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have to have this as a priority.
Absolutely. Who can live in this world without being loved, being in touch with other human beings, seeing somebody smile, seeing somebody this and that, and touching someone and so on? Absolutely. We are all human beings, and we cannot live without that. Our well-being really depends on that. But it is right now, it is the protection from a disease, meaning that we'll just be careful until we're able to cut this disease out or cut its effects a little more, as opposed to people like Donald Trump, our president right here, who says, let's just open up the economy because we need the money and we need to continue to rise in the world opinion, and we need to fight up the Soviets or the Russians or the Chinese and so on, and by going back and making the money and getting these people back to work, and whoever dies, dies. He didn't say that, but he meant it.
Mm.
So it is a matter of how do you do that, and how do you do it with decency, and how do you do it knowing that you're not going to hurt someone,
yeah,
or destroy someone's life.
Mm. So this new normal that people are talking about, what does it look like? It comes wearing jeans and a T-shirt because it's internet and it's hip and it's cool, or it's the new generation. What are your thoughts on that? I know it's everybody's trying to do scenario planning for their life, for businesses, and for economies and countries. But technology is gonna prevail, like you were saying, and that Sheikh Lubna was saying as well. It's gonna be very prevalent and present in our lives. Some industries are gonna be wiped out. Some businesses have to pivot, reinvent themselves. What are we talking about here?
If you look at kids in the first few years of high school, you will see that world. You will see exactly what that world means or looks like, because they're already living it.
Mm-hmm.
Younger students, not college students, but maybe some, are living it now. And it is not really very difficult from ours. It is very similar, and it is almost identical in ways of dealing with each other, as our colleagues were saying about the love and respect and so on for human beings that's needed for humanity. A lot of that is still there, but in their dealing with each other, in communicating with each other, in ordering things to play with, in ordering things to learn, in connecting with people to acquire knowledge is different. It's not bad, but they're just different. And we in a while we'll all be able to do that too. Even the ones that bypassed it, like myself, bypassed all of that technology, and we just began with. And I never saw a computer in my student years at all. I took one course in computers when I was finishing up my PhD. Wow. Just when heard of computers, went to take that course. That's after PhD meeting. I already had. That's after spending 2 years in teaching in Asyut and 2 years in teaching in Heidelberg, in Germany, and so on. Meaning that half of my life really passed without my connecting to any technology whatsoever. But you learn and you can do it. And I'm talking to you now, so it's okay. And I'm not, I'm not terrified. So it can work out. So we can pick up some of it. But as you said, where, and I would say it's among the young people of today, and they can teach us a lot.
Okay, fantastic. So we have a question here from Mahmoud to everyone saying, what about communities where there isn't a very high internet penetration? Will they be missing out on a lot of life as we know it because of that? Because of the, you know, they're not, they don't have access as much access to technology?
That's an excellent question, because it is a problem. And in the past, it used to be the education. If you get educated, if your kids can go to school, then they can make it, and so on. And today, it is that. It is the availability of technology. Some countries realized that and jumped the gun and did it beautifully, like India. There is no one in India that doesn't know what the internet is and is using it for his own or her own, and to make money and to produce from the yard or from the field where he's growing food. So some countries made huge leeway in working with the technology, and some countries like Egypt and some other Arab countries have not done a goddamn thing about it, and they will suffer, and part of their people will suffer because of that. So meaning that it will vary from place to place depending on whether the leadership had vision or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So going forward, where do we put our money? Where do we invest? Do we invest in organic farms? Do we grow our own food? Do we buy Zoom stock? Where do you think work and opportunities in terms of economies is going to be? Sheikh Alubna spoke a little bit about also about shifting industries and shifting businesses and services. Where are we heading here, and what could each one of us do? Because right now, as we're talking, everybody that I talk to, everybody's thinking about how to reinvent their services, how to reinvent their business, whether it is from the banking sector to consulting to any service industry. Restaurants are gonna, become different. Everything that we know and experience, I think is gonna change in terms of their operating model and their business model. And I think that's actually a good thing, because it's giving us a very big push into the future. Kicking and screaming, and maybe so it's like a fast forward. Is this part of a natural economic expansion, a natural economic cycle? Would love to hear your thoughts on it, and anybody else.
In my view, if you allow me, I really think that this is a very significant, very important point, and I'm very aggressive when this comes to this, because I would like to see people staying put for a while. We cannot change now so fast, otherwise many people will fall through the cracks. I really think that we should stick to our word. Do not change your investments now at all, or the way you invested in the past at all. Let the situation stabilize first. Otherwise, many people will suffer. If you take all the money now from the regular money where it supported all the stores and all everything else that you used to have, then all kinds of things are going to fall apart, and many people will just be demolished. I really think that in times of problems like this, just stay cool. We will all lose some, but we will all lose a little bit, which is okay. There will be some people in the middle of us that will take advantage of this or that and make a lot of money, to the hell with it, but they will be 2%. So I would like to see that the 70% of the people that have money and have investments to stick to what they are now, all the way until the whole situation stabilizes, and then they can begin to change. Or else we're gonna hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be like a domino effect.
Yes, and we will not be able to stop it.
No, absolutely.
downhill.
Questions from anybody else? And I think in parallel, we're having this also discussion about people being productive and doing their best to continue with work at hand, because with being crippled with fear and not being productive as much as we can, also we're inducing this economic recession even more and more in the slowdown. So I think the more that each one on an individual basis does to keep the momentum going as much as possible to induce this momentum in the economy. And I think that's a responsibility that also we have to each other, exactly like looking after each other from a health point of view, to keep as much as possible earnings economically, so people can survive it as much as possible.
Very true.
Yeah. All right. I'd like to open it up, please, for thoughts and discussion. Please go ahead.
I have a question, if you allow me, Salma, to Doctor and to everybody also. Dr. Farouk, what do you think about the reaction of the whole countries now? What they are doing is they are reducing the salaries of people. I'm at the banking sector and I see this because it affects a lot of people, that people being reduced salary to 50%, some of them 30%, some of them 80%. And there are a lot of now people calling the banks for to do deferrals or postponement, 3 installment or 4 installment, and the banks do not allow this. Of course, they allow out under certain conditions, and there are also more people being let go at open vacation without salary. So, and this is been implemented on all Middle East. I can believe that. So this will affect the economy in a big way. And even if the situation become good after 4 months or 2 months or 5 months, God knows whenever it is, people need time to again go back to the first step, to go to the normal situation. They need to lend money to survive, because they will, for the time being, people hardly, while they are working now, hardly they are covering their expenses while they are taking their salary in a good terms. What do you say when they are 50% shortage? Hardly they will cover their installment, their car installment, school installment, whatever, universities. And this is affecting the economy in a big way, and how we should come over this. And what do you think the situation should be in an ideal way to happen? Because I don't think this is a proper way to happen, to reduce salaries and to let people go for open vacation 3 months or 6 months without salaries. And there are people that are really suffering nowadays.
I agree, and in many ways, this is exactly what I meant by saying that we all should stay put, because all of us, individuals, companies, universities, or everybody is going to lose a little. So if we all stay put and don't make any moves at all at this time, we are all going to lose, but we will lose something. Everybody will lose something. So the banks will lose some, and I will lose some because of my money is in the bank. My salary comes from the bank now. So I will lose some, and the bank will lose some, but everybody loses a little bit, not a whole segment of the society or of the economy will collapse. To have segments of the economy collapse is bad news and can be hurtful to all of us. So that's what I meant by we should all be staying put. We'll all lose a little bit, but nobody will lose completely. So this is bad policy as far as I'm concerned.
So there's a question on the feed saying, dependency on China do you think the days of high dependency on China over? This is from Mahmoud. You think that there are new markets are going to be popping up, replacing China? Are we going to be doing more local than global? These are also some, discussions that are happening.
Yeah. No, I really think China is in for the long run. China is not going to disappear. China has improved its way of doing things and improved its way of dealing with countries, improving its way to producing things, and it has a whole work class that is doing very well. And China will come out of this flying, or floating still. It's not going to be affected badly, and it will continue to affect the whole world. Or the Chinese economy will be part of the big story. So, meaning that we should not expect China to fall just because it had started with the disease there, or we should not consider China that it's going to shrink, or any other way. I think China will continue, and it's better that we continue to deal with China. In many ways, some of the African countries have dealt with China very easily and let China do all kinds of things, and China basically owns all of the markets in Africa, for good reason, because China is very energetic there. But meaning that China is going to be with us for the long term, and we should continue to depend on China for some things, and we should just keep an eye on China to make sure that China does not come up on top and we are on the bottom, and we should come out on the same level, all of us.
Yeah. Great. Excellent. Thank you. Others, we have Mariam connecting. Welcome, Mariam. Anybody else any thoughts or questions on this? Rania, what's on your mind?
Oh, I'm having a sidebar with Omar over here, who's off camera, but he does come and say hello. Come and say hello. So this is Omar over here on my left.
Hello there.
BU alum, Dr. Farouk, BU alum as well. And his question was a prospect. How do you actually see the future? What do you think is more likely? Is that the collaboration, international collaboration and cooperation that you mentioned at the outset as being absolutely needed to navigate through all of this and come out in a better place? No disagreement on that, but do you see that as the more likely outcome based on everything that's happening right now? Or do you actually see and I guess this question goes to Sheikh Lubna as well, do you actually see the more likely outcome as being one of greater divides, divisions, and a greater protectionism amongst, and more of the, as he described it, the us and them mentality?
Now, in my case, I really believe that we're going to come on top, and we're going to, for a while, we're going to fight each other, and we're going to be separating each other, and we're blaming each other for a while, for a few months, and maybe a year, maybe two. But then people will think about it and realize that we are on this thing together, and that will mean that none of these things will remain for us for a long period of time, and the result of it will improve relations between nations, between people, between economies, and it will be better for human beings worldwide.
And is that based on scientific indicators, or is that based on your inherent belief in humanity?
It may be based on these two, in addition to the fact that it's based on the fact that at the very beginning of this thing, there were fights between the states, there were fights between the US and China, there were fights between the Italians and neighbors, and now they are already beginning to talk to each other, and we're already beginning to cooperate with each other. Human beings are smart. They will see that it is better to do this, and it is better for them to be cooperative, and that will happen in a big way, I think, this time, because we will have suffered a lot.
Great.
If I may ask a quick question to Dr.
Do you have like, sorry, Rajesh, your points? Do you have anything to add on that? Okay.
Sorry, were you asking me or you're asking Sheikh Lubna? I think they.
Because you,
Sheikh Lubna.
yeah, because you addressed it to both Sheikh Lubna and Farouk, so just following up on that.
Yeah.
One second, Sheikh Lubna. Okay. We need to unmute. You're on mute.
Oops.
Go ahead. Do we hear her?
Hear me?
Yeah, now.
Yes.
I hear you now.
Yes, yeah, I think I was on mute. My mind was going, what is mute? What is unmute?
Yeah.
Sorry. In the last 3 years, we've seen rising populism and a lot of division, whether it's within same country or between countries. As Dr. Farouk had alluded to, political problems. But at the end of the day, the basics, the US cannot do without China. China had bought so much government bonds. China owns quite a lot within the US in terms of financial institution, whether it's government bonds, everything. In addition to Walmart and others where there's high dependency on products coming out of China. So it is not something that you can just undo. It's not a button on Microsoft that you just push and it will change. So the interdependency that exists already worldwide will not cease. It will continue. And based on that, a lot of negotiation will work out where every country will have to gain some and lose some. It will not be one-sided. So eventually there will be a balance. What we hear today, and this is my own view, whether it's the US government at the moment targeting and lashing out at China, I think this is more of a heated momentum toward the public to probably gain more votes. And so I believe that this is really more of a political game within the US rather than actual target, because if you have something like that, the lawsuits and the interest of going through this will start rolling. You may hear one or two, but it will start rolling. But there aren't any evidence. We've heard it from medical experts in the US that none of these are manufactured. These viruses and the mutations, they're not manufactured at any of these labs in China. The idea that the government had kept quiet about it for a while and not tell anyone, I don't think anybody had predicted the massive impact and the nature of this virus and how it's going to react. So could have been China, could have been any other country right at the beginning where they thought maybe it's okay, we can manage, and then it went out of control. So we will see a lot of this patting back and forth from different countries. But at the end of the day, I think the whole world, as Dr. Albaz had said, that everybody will just have to sit down and figure out how we cope together. There's no other way. What I call changes, like you said, the changes we're going through, the sudden change, is really more of the creative destruction within technology, within usage, within processes, everything. What it does is we've seen acceleration of changes through technology, but now we're seeing the impact of changes and acceleration going through our lives, not just on technology, but everything else. I think the 5G is upcoming, and that's in itself will have great impacts on how people communicate, but it may have a negative impact. One of the things you don't hear them talk about today, you hear quite a lot about how the skies had cleared because of less movement, that there's no pollution, but can you imagine the pile of gloves and these masks and everything else that we're piling on daily basis? What kind of junk are we going to end up with? I mean, we've got more pollution today happening on daily basis from everybody than we've ever had before. So we moved from blue plastic bags into gloves and masks, doubling the amount. So this is something we have to think about as well. We're on the verge of the whole societies 2018-19, and the US, you see this quite a lot. Paper-based shopping, bring your own bags and things like this, and now plastic bags everywhere to seal everything. So the change is happening almost at every level of our environment, of our life at the moment. And it will continue that way, as Dr. Baz had said. This doesn't go away easily. There are some viruses until today, like AIDS and Ebola, where they don't have vaccine. So we yet have to test these vaccines, whether it would actually be extremely effective, that you can utilize them, or that we'd have to accept this and change the way we live, not by being enclosed with physically, but we have to deal with our lives differently, where we accept this virus around us and we take precautions.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. I think Rajesh had a question in here.
Yes, well, I'd just like to say what an honor it is to be on the same Zoom call as such a great scientist, Dr. Farouk. So I'm really honored. Quick question. A lot of countries are now doing a lot of stimulus packages. India just announced 200 billion, which is 10% of its GDP. I think Japan is at nearly 20%. And they're all saying that they will borrow from somebody, which was fine when one country was trying to borrow. But now so many countries are expected to borrow. How is it all going to play? And are we setting up ourselves for a global financial disaster to come post-corona?
I'm not a money man, so I have no idea how this will all play out. But I really think that the people that work on the economies of the world will find a way to deal with all of this. We all need that. We will require some funds to do that. Where these funds will come from, and how would they be distributed, is another way, another story. But that definitely will need that money. Definitely, countries like India and Japan and so on need it to revive. The Arab world requires the same thing, and we will all have to do that. How do we deal with it in the financial market? There's got to be experts that can deal with that in a safe way. So I don't really think that we're going to crash. All our economies are going to crash down. So there is human beings can be innovative, and I think we can be innovative in our ways, and we can deal with it. If we don't do that, we can do something else. If there is a problem, we'll go around it. So we can deal with that.
That's great. Excellent, great. Any more questions or thoughts? This conversation, and this is not your typical webinar. It's been it's been a pleasure and very informative. And thanks for all the points of views and the questions that are being posed. I think that's what's really on everybody's minds, and to have the luxury and the pleasure of having this select group of individuals, and Dr. Baz, you addressing them, and Sheikh Lubna as well. Truly, it's a treat. I had promised 1 hour, but of course, Daiman, we run over. It's been like 1.5 hours almost, but because
I still have a question for Rania.
Go ahead, please. We can wrap it up.
You are in the world of corporation. You're in the food industry. Can you tell us the impact of this pandemic within the big corporations, specifically in the food industry? What is happening in that sphere? Because now the food security has been the most critical path going forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Sheikh Lubna. I think like any other, I'll speak just for us, for our company and what we're going through. I think like any other multinational, any other large company, any other company that exists in a in many jurisdictions. It really has been, I think, a unprecedented, and it has been one of those things that I believe tests the leadership and tests the company and tests the mission of the company and tests every individual in the company in ways that were previously unexpected. I would say that the last 3 months have been ones that have involved a lot of reflection and need to react and think through things very quickly on all sorts of levels. We have, again, similar to many of the things that we've been talking about today, connectivity between leaders and teams and throughout the organization is like never before. The number of broad discussions and Zoom calls with 200 and 300 of the leaders both across the globe and also within the different territories is something that, again, has been viewed by everyone as a huge positive. It is forcing everyone to, all of the things that people that have been on the agenda and have been thought of before and in the prior years, like sustainability, like the planet, like food security, health and safety. I mean, every single level and aspect of the things that any company, and especially one in the food and business, but manufacturing as well, would be thinking about in any strat plan or in any operating plan has been amplified, has been sort of blown up into lots of different directions, and has the company thinking about many different things. Almost everything, single subject that we touched upon, changes in consumer behavior, trying to reimagine the future, making sure our people are safe. Do you open or do you, not reopen offices? You have plants that are operating. How do you equip the plants and the people on the ground and the front line to continue doing what it needs to do? It's important to keep producing and delivering for reasons very different. Business continuity, I would say, has probably never had a human impact or the social need and the human need and the economic need built into it in the same way that it has in the last few months. So many of the things that we talk about how we operate in our communities, the importance of how we deliver, all of those things have really just come to life during the past few months and have taken us, I think, into a very different place. One of the things that I was thinking about is, again, as we all talk about reimagining the future, one of the things that I was thinking about earlier, and I think we continue to discuss, is we are all focused on reimagining the future, on dealing with the immediate today, on dealing with the short term, dealing with the midterm, and trying to prepare for the future. But the reality is, our ability to do so is very much limited or connected to the accuracy and availability of information, the accuracy of data, the availability of information, and all of that. Even things like vaccines. I asked the question early on about the importance and is it really the top priority? And while it absolutely is, I think that what we're starting to realize over time is that the need to get out, to engage, to transform is probably going to be much sooner and much earlier than some of those answers and some of those solutions that we're looking for in terms of vaccine, in terms of treatment, if there is such a thing. But what will really make a difference, I think, in the short term or in the near term, is going to be that availability of data, having as much information and a deepest understanding as possible to be able to make the best decisions, but also being agile and being able to accept the fact that those decisions and that information is going to continue to evolve and change over time. So I don't know if that answers your question a little bit, but that's kind of a snapshot of how we're thinking about it and what we're doing these days and just how fast that's evolving. So it's a lot of communication, it's a lot of engagement, it's learning to be more flexible, I think, than we've ever been in the past, and just being ready, willing, and able to accept ambiguity and the unknown, which also isn't a hallmark, I think, of, you know, of large corporations or of humanity in general. I think people struggle with it, but it's really being able to accept that, get to as much good information as possible, and be willing to iterate and adapt as we move forward.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Just a response to Rania. And firstly, I'd say some very positive, it's great to hear positive news from Dr. Farouk. I've been spending the last few months, as some of you know, at helping companies restructure. And so it's all been about negative news. It's all been about trying to cope with uncertainty of information. As Rania said, it's a skill to be able to deal with ambiguity. And every day we get new data points, and we're trying to react to those data points. And within one team, we may have 2 or 3 different opinions. Just a few minutes ago, someone sent me something about oil price has just popped to 27. And my reaction immediately was, this is just the reaction to the cutting down of supply. I don't think ships are moving. I think supply chains are in trouble. So let's wait till July to see what happens. And yet I mean, I'm designed to be glass half empty, but that information someone else saw as a very big positive. Other things like a 15% tax rise in Saudi, closer to our home, worries me intensely, because I think employees are already very short of cash, true cash, they can spend. And any even vague consumer surplus spending has just gone away in our region. Even in Dubai, although we're still at 5%, the worry is, well, if Saudi did 15, what happens to us? So I must say it's good to have that positive. The way I was thinking about it was, maybe this is very much like the curve that you have when you get bad news and you go into depression and you're thinking only negatively. But in the end, you do then convert and say, okay, what are the positives that are coming out of this? And we need to shorten that gap, because when we're trying to deal with coping with kind of losses, we try to do that. We are still going to go through that curve. It's just that we need to shorten that timing. And again, Rania is in a business which is in food, which is doing well. But almost every other business I speak to is trying to survive without that luck. But I do think we need that positive sentiment.
Definitely. I think, you know, positivity is very important. And I think, you know, Dr. Elbaz has always had a very a glass half full kind of approach in general to life. But I think having that, seeing the opportunities and having that outlook allows us to actually see more opportunities and work towards them. So that's very, very beneficial, I think, from a practical point of view as well. Dr. Elbaz, you're nodding.
You're agreeing with me, that's good. and thanks for his comments too. I think he made a very good comment about the fact that he's dealing with the tough situation right now, and it would not be able to see the potential good outcome out of it. But indeed, it is time now to begin to think that after all this mess, we're gonna come out of it. No question about it.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Elbaz. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been very, very informative. Thank you to everybody who was on this call. Really, it was a treat to have this conversation and visit. Well, I wish I made like a coffee. It would have been a very nice virtual coffee and and some diafe. But really, thank you so much. It's been an eye-opener on many, many levels. Thanks to everybody who joined. And good to see everybody, all the people we haven't seen for a long, long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to you also, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Stay home.